Hi Marcy, Jim, and now it's time to work on the wing of our crashed plane. These things came through pretty good, but as you can see here, we've busted off this little bit of plywood coming through there, and what you might be able to see is that down inside there, this little piece of plywood goes back to the next former, or whatever you call it, thing in the wing. So it goes back to the next one. It's got plywood, or it's got probably balsa covering on both sides. So what I'm planning on doing is I'm going to, instead of cutting a great big hole in the side, we're going to do keyhole surgery. I'm going to cut in a little slot just inside of this outside former here. And I'm going to cut another slot next to the one over here, which will take that up. I can then clean out this little end piece here, and then I'll work out what else to put in there. And I'm not sure whether to stick with plywood or to go with something stronger, but we'll have a look and we'll work that out as we go. Okay, now I'm preparing for surgery. We've worked out where this is, so I've taken my square and worked back from the edge of that, where that is there, where it is here. I've then used this to go in and to find where that next thing is, so I made it just a little bit long. And then I've pushed it in here to get it to where it's flat there. Pull it out carefully, tighten it up. Then I've used that to work out where the length is. And I see that my mark there, most of it is going to come out. Then for this one here, I've used the calipers to work out what the thickness of that panel is there. I've used the calipers here then to work out where that is, and again we're going to basically take out those marks. Okay, so I'm going to make a cut there and a cut here. So what I've done first of all is cut a little slot. I just widened it up enough to fit my saw. And by the way, do be careful about what you do with X-Acto blades. I was reaching into my box to open the cover, and there happened to be a blade right there and went about a quarter of the way up my fingernail. Okay, so anyway, with this we then use this guy and making sure there's no wires that I'm going to be cutting there. Okay, so it's got that one. That's what we call keyhole surgery. Okay, now I'll get this one. Feels like it is balsa. It's pretty easy to cut. I think I've probably gotten into the little bit of the glue or something. They've probably epoxied the thing in there. And so while I'm at the spot where it indicates we ought to be, it feels like there's something underneath it. Let's go a little bit farther up just so that I can get the blade in there. Okay, let's see what we can do here. Yeah, that should do it. After having gone over the two slots again, we got the bit out of there. So came out from inside there, and that's gone. So now the thing to do is to open up the hole where it came out of that root wing former. And so we're drilling a couple holes in there and then taking the X-Acto knife to clean it out. And get it to where it can fit the new little tab plywood piece that we fit in there. We've used a drill to get in there, and then we're working away with the X-Acto knife to open up that area, clean out the bits of the old beam that was in there. Okay, I just noticed that while we've got this thing here, the one is missing there, but it's just been pushed farther back inside there. Now, as we look at the fuselage here, we see got a locating pin here, and there's one there that I've partially filled with a micro bubble, so they'll have to get cleaned up. This one here is the one that was pushed in. It was actually broken loose from that little bit of former that was in there, so we'll use some epoxy with that. If it doesn't stick out exactly as far as it used to be, that'll be okay. The spar will go through here. I don't think there's any problem with that, and I think I've got a spare one of those. So hey, our keyhole surgery ended really well. We'll just seal up those. Okay, so we'll clean up that hole, we'll epoxy that in, we'll make a piece for this and we'll epoxy that in. That one's all okay. This one is the one that gets epoxied in. Well, I've cleaned out the micro bubbles out of the hole there, and just doing a bit of a trial fit with the wing without the center thing, but just looking at these guys. There's a bit of a slop there, which I don't particularly like. Tiny bit on the front, a lot more on the back. I might just wrap some tape around these to build them up to the point to where I don't have the slop. I think we'll just leave the holes as they are, and then we'll see what it's like with the spar in there as well. I mentioned before about my wing tube getting sort of bent up as it is, and having a spare, which was given to me with a plane. But having looked at it, that spare is a lot heavier. So I'm going to get a carbon fiber tube to replace this with, just to make sure my eyes weren't playing tricks on me. 170, 112, 111. Yep, the spare is a little bit heftier, and I don't really want all that extra weight in my plane, so carbon fiber will be good. Okay, so far what we've done is we've gotten the hole cleared out. We've made a couple of these guys here to go in there, one for each wing. Okay, we've then taken a single piece of 2mm plywood, and we've epoxied that down on the floor in there, and that's to give it a little bit of extra beef to hold on to, because it's not going through the former that's at the back here that's been cut off there. So what I want to do at this time, okay, when I put this guy in there, if you look closely, you can see that it's up off of the floor, up off of that extra piece down here at this end, where it's touching at the other end. So it really wants to come up a tiny bit. And in thinking about how far that needs to be, right now I've got a 2mm piece such as this that's glued down to the floor. I'm trying to manipulate this thing so you can see. So you can see we've got a little bit of a gap between the bottom of this piece here. We've got a little bit of a gap between this piece here and where the floor is, and the question is how much. If we were to add another piece of the same thickness, then it's only paper thin between that and that. So another one of those is too much. So then the question is, what if we take a bit of balsa that's a little bit thinner and try that in there? And that's still very thin. I think I want even less than that. That might be 1.5 mil thick. So I think what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to use some cardstock. And you might say cardstock, I mean, you're talking about your wing. But in actual fact, if it's got a fair amount of area and it's impregnated with epoxy, plus it's epoxied on here, I don't think that's going to come out. If it crashes, you want something to come loose anyway, but chances are it'll just break here again. So I think a bit of cardstock in there will do the job. Well, I'm always saving stuff for times like this, and I think I'm going to use this stuff. You know, it's reasonably flimsy, but like I say, it'll get impregnated with the resin. It'll have the full length of it to grab a hold, and the two ends will still be epoxied on there of the support sort of thing that is going in there. So this should help hold it into the right place. It's not a hugely critical thing, but I'm going to be pulling down on that. I've decided that what I'm going to do in the fuselage is I'm actually going to have a blind panel nut on the end of this, and the bolt is going to go through the blind panel nut that's on the bottom of the fuselage, but I'm going to drill it out to where the bolt clears that one, and it'll be tightening onto this one. So it's going to be pulling down onto this a bit. So I really want that to be close to where it belongs. So hence the a little bit of a spacer in there. This little bit of cardboard is also going to serve a secondary purpose, and that is that I can get glue on both sides of it and put it in there, and then I can insert the beam without worrying about all of the glue getting wiped off the beam, pushing it through this rather snug fit in this hole here. So I think we got a win-win solution coming up here. Okay, so we see that that's soaking into the material. Now we get a hold of our thing with a yeah, it's like okay. Now we are going to still put stuff on this guy. Okay, and so we'll insert this in here. Just going to put a little bit of epoxy on the outside of this. Just help strengthen it up a little bit. Well, with our other wing here, it's a bit simpler. We've got a delamination of the plywood there, but there's so you can put that one on there. Yeah, I'm not sure about putting a few glass fibers out there to help strengthen that, but I think we can fix that one and not have to do the surgery. Okay, what I've just done is I've cut that little piece of plywood to insert in there. I've epoxied it all up nicely, stuck that in there. I then put a little bit of epoxy onto the outside surface, and I've just pulled off individual fibers off of the glass cloth, and And I've laid those fibers on there, and then I've worked it in with the knife and a little bit of my fingers and whatever. So that should be very strong. Stronger than what it used to be. Well, we've got our little fuzzling happening here. So let's see about carving that off. Okay. Nice tough stuff. You want to be very careful with the fingers of this stuff. Well, with this knife. And the big question is, will that fit in here without any further modification? Okay, we're going to skinny it up just a bit. Yeah, that'll work. Well, we now need to get our holes located for where our mounting point is going to be. I selected a drill bit that just fits inside of the threads on these blind panel nuts that are in here from the other side, and that's going to make a very precise location of that hole. Okay, and this seems to be held in there quite nicely. Okay, that's that one. And now for this one. Okay, so that gives us our locating hole where we're going to put a blind nut onto this piece. So the plan is we're going to have a little M3 bolt into a blind nut that is going to be fastened on the back side of this. Screw will go in from the bottom. It'll go through the hole where we've already got a blind nut there, but we're going to drill that out so that this clears it. Biggest worry with this is, what if this bolt drops out? So I think I'm going to be inclined to use a thread locker on it. I don't tend to pull apart my planes, you know, this size of a plane. I'll tend to leave the wings on as I transport it. You know, if it was a full-size aircraft, you would have some sort of lugs on the end of the bolt that you could wire to something else so it can't turn and it can't fall out. And that's what we really need on this. I just don't know how to do it. We could carve or grind a little radius into one of the flats on this and run a screw in behind it. Alternately, if we could find a bolt that had a flat bit on the top that had a hole through it, we could then wire that to something. Okay, we're going to give that some thought, but at the moment I think I'm still going with the M3 bolts blind nut. Just thinking of the difference between having a nut there and using the threads on the fuselage, I'm thinking I can get a snugger fit by having the nut on this piece. It means it will have a slightly larger hole in it, but not much. And it'll have these prongy things sticking into it, but I don't think that's going to affect too much. And either way, we've got that issue of what happens if the bolt falls out, and we got to do something to make sure that doesn't happen. Less stress on this, I guess, if you had it just on there, but potentially more slop. Yeah, we'll go with my plan. See how it works. Okay, got my blind nut. I'm measuring the outside diameter of the part that comes in. Okay, and we've got, looks like 3.65. I've then gone to my drills, and I found a drill that's 3.65. These are numbered drills, not normal sort of ones. So we're going to use that to drill both of these. Okay, we've done that. Okay, blind nut is going to be on the, this is the underside, this bolt's going in that way, so the nut has to be down below it. Okay, we're going to give it a bit of a squeeze to get those prongs going in there. We want to be have the jaws as flat as possible. As we're doing this, push it in straight. Now we're going to pull it the rest of the way using the bolt. We will use a couple of washers, and amazingly enough, believe it or not, the hex on this thing is 5.5 millimeters. It's an M3 bolt with a 5.5 millimeter head on the thing, which I find rather strange. Took me a while to dig around my tools to find one that would fit it. Okay, now we're just using the actual bolt to pull the nut up. And of course, the little tiny things, you want to be careful that you don't overdo it. One way to avoid overdoing it is the way you hold the wrench. Don't get out on the end of it out here. You know, fingers, or just use a driver. Okay, so that looks quite nice. Okay, so we've got the blind nuts in place. Now we need to cut a clearance hole for that. 2.91. This drill index, got it from my dad, but it's got drill numbers. So the larger one there was a 27 and the smaller one was a 43, and then it's got decimal inches. So the larger one was 0.164 and the small one was, you know, something small. But actually I could measure that in inches, couldn't I? Okay, 0.115, 0.116 we got, 0.113. Well, let's start out with a 0.113. Can always go bigger. Okay, so we're going to drill our hole here. See if indeed this will fit through. One way to get it tight. Okay, I can actually get that thread through there, and it gives it a little bit of resistance, which will be good in terms of that thing not falling out. Of course, it'll tend to sort of cut its own threads. At least we know it's nice and snug. Okay, now for the moment of truth. Okay, that's Not quite in far enough. What's happening is it's forcing it to cross thread because the hole is just a little bit on the inside. And I must admit that when I drilled the holes, I made sure I had the drill such that it was going to force it to be a little bit closer. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go up one size on this hole to give it just that little bit more freedom to line up. Well, that was quite a battle, but I think we won. Yeah, we just drilled another size larger than that and was real careful to make sure that when we threaded it in, we didn't force anything. And that looks like that's fine. And it's just checking to see that there's no gap between the two bits of plywood there, so that's quite safe as far as being snug down that way. And now we'll just do the other one, hopefully not have quite so much of a battle. Well, with our starboard wing, no problem at all. I had to relieve the little slot just a bit. This slot here, had to relieve the top of that just a bit to allow room for the blind nut where it was sticking out a tiny bit to be able to get in there. But that was all. The bolt fit in perfect, so I did better as far as locating that hole. Hey, we did it! Yep, the wings are now in place, on nice and secure and strong. And boy, this plane is just about ready to go. Got a bit of covering to do, but I'm really excited about this, and I trust that you are as well, especially those of you that have been following right from the start, as we've had several videos where we've gone through all of the steps in getting to this point. And of course, if you haven't seen them, well, what you need to do is click on the little circle there with my picture on it, and that will subscribe you to our channel. It doesn't cost you anything, and you'll be able to find all of those things there. And while you're at it, have a look at the rectangle there, as that has a link to one of our other videos on the channel. So you have a great day, and happy flying.